I'm very honored to have this award, obviously, because so many great people have had it before, but also because Lesley Cormack is, for me, not just someone who has contributed to SFU, but she's also an eminent scholar in my area in philosophy of science. So this is something of a double honor for that. Now, when I saw the topic, I was a little bit perplexed because I'm not an ethicist, despite organizing this ethics bowl. And I know really little, let's say nothing, about the ethics of care literature. But I was like, I'm a philosopher. I should probably make an argument of some sort in that presentation. So I decided to go ahead. Now, I was thinking probably the person who chose the topic was thinking we should think about why should teachers care about their students and what are the implications of that are for curriculum development and the improvement of our pedagogical practice. Now, for me, I take it as obvious that caring about our students is essential to both and that we should constantly keep it in mind. So for me, it's kind of granted that we have a duty of care for our students. So I didn't know exactly what I would talk about because it's too obvious for me. So I decided to approach things from a slightly different perspective that has contributed a lot to the most valuable experiences that I've had in my learning, and it's to look at it from the point of view of the students. So points of view determine a lot about what we think. I don't know if you've seen that one before. We know that from our research, from our teaching, and from our everyday life. So I want to ask, as professors, what is our perspective on the classroom? Well, fortunately, that's an easy question. Our perspective is that of a typical professor, if we are a typical professor, right? So here's an example of what we could see. Now, this perspective of the professor has some, well, main elements that are worth emphasizing. And those are features that typically make us unrepresentative of the set of human beings that find themselves in a classroom. So we are former top students. We value education and not just degrees, which is not something we can say about all our students, unfortunately. We have some level of academic ambition. We enjoy the topic we teach, which, as mentioned, is something that doesn't happen a lot with my students at first. We have some sort of stability in our life and hopefully not too much pressure from our parents at this stage of our life. So given that perspective that we have, what exactly do we see? Well, we see all sorts of things that we do not like. We see people daydreaming, arranging dates, looking at the ceiling, playing with their pen, giving up on everything, things like that. So we see those things, and that's not even talking about the phones and the laptop and all of that. We see those things, and we judge students negatively for what we see. We do it, right? We all do it, and it's normal. So what I want to talk about in the little bit of time I have left is what is the nature of that judgment and how should we think of it? And how does it relate to how we should judge ourselves as the judgers? So qua teachers, as I said, I think we do have a duty to care about our students, but now I want to ask the question, do students have a duty to care about what we're teaching them? And well, qua students, probably, it's kind of part of the job description. So if we think of it in those terms, the answer would be yes. However, students are not just students, they are humans, and they have obligations that come from the other parts of their life, whether it's the family, the friends, the job, all of those things, which gives rise to a set of conflicting duties that they are subject to. Now, when there are conflicting duties, I taught a course on conflicting duties with Evan once. Fortunately, he was there to make the ethics straight. So when we are subject to conflicting duties, then we have to decide what is going to be the right action to perform based on the priorities that we have as well as the circumstances that we fall ourselves under. And of course, there are many fairly reasonable sets of priorities that we could implement in this context. Now, if you're a lover of Euclidean geometry like me, it is extremely tempting to put that in a diagram with 3 axes. So the vertical axis determines or characterizes the extent to which students behave in a dutiful manner. On the x-axis, that's the axis I call blameworthiness, that's one dimension of the judgment that we pass. And students will be deemed more or less blameworthy. So it's a judgment of the persons. And on the y-axis, we have liability or accountability, where we pass a judgment not on the person, but rather on the act that they perform. So with this beautiful, rigorous Euclidean geometrical representation, we can make 4 observations. On the one hand, I don't think that we're in the business of judging students, because we don't know what other duties they are facing in their lives, and we also don't know their circumstances. But despite that, we can very much hold them accountable for their actions. And in fact, students will expect you to hold them accountable. If you do not, they will not respect you. And I think that's part of it. That's important. Now, as I mentioned, I think we have a duty to care, but on top of that, we have a duty to care about whether students care. So philosophers love to take it meta. So now we're talking caring about caring. And we have, as teachers, to hold ourselves accountable for that duty that we have. And that leads me to my guiding principle in all of my teaching. For me, the most important objective of a teacher is to make students want to learn the things that we teach. And there are 2 dimensions to that. One is to give them reasons to care about this stuff that appeals to the intellect. But also we have to elicit a desire to want to learn this stuff, which is the more effective dimension. Both of those are extremely important. Now, if we simply assume that students owe it to us or to themselves to care, I think we are running the risk of falling short of our duties as a teacher. Now, you might think this is trivial, this is obvious, so I'd like to press a little bit because I think it is in fact controversial. I have sat on many committees where we assess teaching practices, and I think that very often teaching practices are assessed with the following maxim. All students who, suppose I'm trying to structure what I do as a teacher based on the following. All students who happen to care about my course will have a positive and fruitful learning experience. Lots of people think that if you live up to that standards, you've discharged your obligations as a teacher. But that says nothing about students who happen not to care, right? And this is why I think that if that's your maxim, you can still fall short of your duties as a teacher. So I want to make a stronger claim. I want to make the stronger claim that going out of your way to make students care is not going beyond the call of duty. It is the duty. And I think that should be controversial. I think a lot of teachers would want to say, oh, I don't want to be held up to that standard. It's way too high. Well, I think that should be the standard. Now that principle, as I just explained it, I think has lots of pedagogical implications. Philosophers love to talk in terms of imperatives, so that's why I wrote that, pedagogical imperatives. So there are imperatives that have to do with giving reasons to care, and there are imperatives associated with eliciting a desire to care. The most important thing in terms of giving reason is to be transparent in the way we learn. That is to say, we have to tell students what they learn and why they learn it. And in my view, when I say why you learn that, it's not just in terms of, oh, you need to learn that stuff because you're going to take Logic 2 or Calculus 2, and you need to have to know that. It's a prerequisite. No, it's more like, why would a human being who has so many other interesting things to do in life would spend time on that course, right? That's a little bit more personal. So when I teach logic, I take an entire 1-hour lecture just talking about the place of logic in the tradition of liberal arts education and how it's important to become a true educated citizen and things like that. And I do believe that it makes students much more motivated than to go through the grueling process, which is the rest of the course. Then there are many other things. I think students have to be able to detect improvement in certain skill. It's not just about them improving. They have to know they're improving. So I make them time themselves in logical analysis. And by the end of the semester, they're like, whoa, I'm 25 times faster than I was at the beginning on the same sort of problems. So then they see, whoa, I've gotten something out of this course. In terms of eliciting a desire, it's a good thing to be very, very much enthusiastic, but also if you want to teach some sort of skill, it's a good idea to embed it in a really cool, sexy topic that might be appealing to students. And this is why a few years back I built a course on conspiracy theories, which was meant to teach them critical thinking. And as the title of the article mentioned, I'm tricking them into learning critical thinking. So anyway, I could keep going, but I think I'm over time enough. So thank you.